Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez. I'm here with Sauce and we're here for our round recap show of round one. Sauce, how good is it to have footy back?
Hey guys, amazing to have footy back. It was great to actually be at the footy as well, Pez, and that first holding the ball signal and the sound from the crowd, $2 pies, cold mid-strength beer. Oh, it was all happening.
I saw a few things on Twitter about the mid-strength beer and the prices going up and things like that. So that's not very good, but I haven't been to the footy yet, so I'll hopefully get along in round two. But did you use the old, he's been doing it all day,
No, but I did tell the bloke next to me about that. I said, that's one of the best things I like to hear at the footy is that he's been doing it all day,
Did you hear it?
No, I didn't hear it.
Oh, that's really disappointing.
We were talking about the good sounds of the footy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a definite good sound of the footy. And I looked back at the first game on Thursday and I looked back to last year in 2020 and just the difference because they had no audio last year. They had no fake crowd noise. It was just all sounds of the game, what you could hear on the field. It's so much better watching footy with a crowd.
So much better, and it's good to have that atmosphere, Pez. I was at the Essendon Hawthorn game, 1 point game, and when that last goal went through, the last 2 minutes was very exciting. The big roar from that, next to my mate who was he's a very sort of modest sort of supporter. He doesn't really do a lot of cheering, but when that second last goal went through and they thought they had it snagged, up and about, had the double pythons going. He was up and about, but then obviously taken away from him, and
it would have been really disappointed.
It was very interesting how quick the stadium cleared out after as well. And
was
he was
majority fans, Essendon, Hawthorn?
It was a good mix. It was an Essendon home game, but it was a lot of Essendon fans there because obviously they had the priority to the membership. But still a fair few Hawthorn supporters there, so I'm not sure how that works. But
I'll be interested to talk about that when we get to that in our recap and have a look at how Essendon capitulated that big lead. So let's get straight into it. We've got 9 games to get through.
Football underway. Would you ask for any greater drama in this match? First goal of the Nine Eagles. That's a start.
And as I mentioned before, Sauce, last Thursday, it was Richmond versus Carlton, the regular season. We spoke about this as the round opener, season opener, last week on our show, Behind the Bound. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, at Behind the Bound. Richmond won 105 to Carlton's 80, beating them by 25 points in the end, and it wasn't that big a margin. It was about 6 minutes before that.
No, it's the same thing that happens every single year. Carlton came out flying. The middle of the game, it was sort of dominated by... dominated by Richmond, and then Carlton made their way back. And then the last quarter, the man on the mark reel really opened up. And typical in Richmond fashion, they bowled out to a 5 or 6 goal league. And really disappointing for Carlton because it's not probably how the game properly illustrated how competitive they were for 90% of it.
Well, how competitive they were. I think Richmond absolutely dominated because they had 75 inside 50s to 41. They just couldn't get the shots from it. So Carlton's defence stood up a little bit. You had Weirian who played pretty well. But I just think Richmond, if Dustin Martin didn't play, then Carlton would have really had a shot to try and steal it, even with the less inside 50s. But that guy just had the ball in a string and kicking goals like he did in the grand final.
Yeah, absolute string, mate. He just the sheer strength of him. There were 3 or 4 opportunities where he sort of broke into a pack and had the ball and had nowhere else to go. There's one opportunity where he actually fell over, and the sheer strength of him to be able to still get, fend off a tackle, get a kick away, go get his own ground ball. He's just an incredible person to watch play football. And you talk about, like straight out superstars of the game, and he is making a great case to probably put his hat in the ring for one of the best players we've ever had.
Oh, easily, and best player in the game at the moment, in my opinion.
Hands down.
It was very easy to tell after last year even, and after round one. He could have kicked 6. I kept saying to you, we were watching it together, I was like, could have 6 here, could have 7, because he's unselfish, and a couple of his kicks went astray when he was snapping around the corner and things like that. But he ended up with 2 goals, ended up with 31 disposals, and was one of the best players on the ground.
Yeah, most definitely. There's nothing more you can say. Clear best offensive player on the ground.
There's 3 votes.
There's the 3 votes. Yeah, straight away. It was really good to see some of the other Richmond players stand up though. You had Bolter, who probably is not going to poll well there, but he was looking amazing down back and really kept Carlton from scoring a couple of those opportunities. They went forward a couple of times and they looked really promising, and then just Bolter just absolutely dominating.
For them to lose Alex Rance and them to just get a gem like Noah Bolter and just to come in and be a premium one-on-one defender, it's just how lucky can you get? But as we said on Behind the Bound, because we recorded that the Cheeky Punt pod afterwards in the game, Bolter, yes, probably second best on ground, but won't get the votes. I said Shea Bolton with his 25-1 probably would get the votes there, and the young guy from Carlton, your man.
Yeah, Sammy Walsh. Sammy Walsh looked amazing. He had 31 disposals. He was pretty decent around the ground. Had 7 clearances for the game, so definitely kept Carlton alive in those patches where they were looking promising. And I think you're right what you said, that whilst Richmond did dominate the game, I think Carlton being 8 points down into the last quarter to go down by 30 and just be absolutely not present in that last quarter, that last probably 15 minutes. Really disappointing for Carlton, but some positive signs for them moving forward. Like always, they're coming, Pez.
They're coming.
They're coming.
But one of the positive ones was it's never good to see someone injured, but Silvani went off with a shoulder, and Oscar McDonald comes in. He kicks 2 goals. He looked on fire, could not do anything wrong. And he jumped on board. Carlton was their multiple goal kicker along with McKay and Gibbons, who both had 2. But he's definitely starting next week.
Most definitely stuff. Well, that was an interesting question that we had. You would have to imagine 2 goals in less than 200 seconds. He'd probably be getting a start up for the week after this week against old foes Collingwood.
And the thing that came up about the medical sub, so that was the first one, a serious one where Silvani did something to his shoulder. But the other one was Vlosten with his knee. Is it a corky? Was it this? Was it that? There was a lot of talk after the game because he went off and got replaced by the medical sub.
Yeah, and we spoke about this a little bit in some of our questions coming up into round 1 about what is going to be deemed medically unfit. And, like at the moment, I've got a bit of a corky in my calf, but am I ruled medically unfit because it's a little bit uncomfortable, or is it medically unfit where it's going to, if I continue playing, it's going to do more damage? So really interesting, that one. And it was good that the rule got some scrutiny right up from round 1. But to tell you what, though, Pez, the 2 things that I noticed out of the round 1 and the rest of the round for a start was the man on the mark rule. The umpires actually controlled that really well and didn't go berserk with the blowing the 50s. And we had more 50s for the protected area one, which all of them that I saw were just dumb, the players not being aware. What it did show us is in that last quarter, the fitter teams, the teams that run more, they're going to take advantage of these longer quarters from last year, back to our normal quarters of 20 minutes, and to be able to create that flow going forward. And that has been the trend in a lot of the games this round.
Yep, you see the quarter, you see there's 5 minutes left in the quarter, and you go, the fitter team here runs over the top. So the other thing we have to mention from round 1 Sauce, this season we are head-to-head, not in tipping, but head-to-head in lines. We went against each other in 3 different games this round, and for the first one, Sauce had Richmond minus 23.5 and snuck home. They won by 25, so 1 point to me, and you miss out there.
Yeah, I did miss out on that one. I was a bit disappointed because I think early in the last quarter I said to you, well,
you went the early crow.
I went the early crow, and then they went bang, 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 and I thought, yeah, right. Yeah, shit. Yeah, absolutely shit. So, all right, on to the next game. We have the Western Bulldogs, or Collingwood take on the Western Bulldogs. And it was an interesting game, touted as a bit of could have been a bit of a grudge match for Mr. Treloar. Collingwood playing Western Bulldogs, and it was a decent sort of win for the Bulldogs there.
Yeah, that was the big narrative going in with Treloar, and he did interviews on Fox Footy, and he said how much he loved the club and things like that. Didn't they get around him? And the Collingwood fans in the first quarter giving him the booze when Collingwood showed him the door. And then in the fourth quarter when he got the ball, they actually applauded him and things like that. So they saved face a little bit there. Treloar probably wasn't one of the best players. You saw that massive mullet by Bailey Smith. Him running around in his rig and what he does. Absolutely amazing, and 3 Brownlow votes there for sure.
100% 3 Brownlow votes. And I actually did a little bit of a cheeky after the game, Pairs. I jumped on Sportsbet and chucked a fiver on him to win. He was paying $81. He's already come into $41. I know it's not a betting podcast, but he is an unbelievable player. Not only player, but like kick of the football. If he can continually average over 30 and a couple of snags, don't worry about Bottom-Belly for the Brownlow. Got to get over this with Bailey Smith. With that mullet, he definitely will stand out as well, Pez. No need for the bleach Woden hair. It's all about the mullet.
That's it. In the first quarter, something popped up on my phone. I get the notifications from Sir Swamp Thing off Twitter, and he said 14 players have gone inside 50. 14 different players for the Bulldogs in 14 inside 50s. And then I read that on my phone, put my phone down. 30 seconds later, Matthew Richardson doesn't even shout him out. He just goes, he uses the stat as his own. And I'm sitting there going, Richo, you can't be doing this. He's got Twitter. He's got these notifications on. Oh, if Sir Swamp Thing gets something out, I'm just going to take the credit here and do that. So I wasn't happy with Richo there.
It's actually, we've talked about this a few times. Not a fan of the show, but definitely one of our favourite Twitter accounts. Sir Swamp Thing, jump on it. His database, or their database that they're using there, must be incredible. But the stats that come out and the quickness of it. But now I've noticed, Pez, other people that I follow on Twitter have been doing the exact same thing, and it's really poor for Richo for doing that. But we're getting a little bit sidetracked and not talking about the football. Interesting thing is how many inside 50s the Western Bulldogs had, and they didn't take control of this game, and they left Collingwood in there for some heroics from Darcy Moore, who continually just intercept marks all over the place. How are the Western Bulldogs going to get over this hurdle of not being able to score, Pez? Because, they came out 16-point winners. They dominated this game, and they just couldn't seem to get a good forward entry.
Yeah, well, 27 shots from 60 inside 50s is not very good. And I was messaging you throughout the game, Sauce, and when they kick it up high and they kick it up to, what's meant to be a forward, they don't have anyone down there at the moment that can, really take a grab or do that. Norton, he looks fumbly. Bruce, nowhere near it. And English, he still looks a bit scared and a bit skinny. So we'll see how he goes over the season. But they need to put someone in there, put the number one draft pick in there, and just get him to take a grab. Because when they kicked it up high and they were under the pump, Collingwood just got it out too easily. When they were running it in and then spotting up a short target, that's when they looked good. That's when they could kick goals. But you've got to be able to kick goals both ways. Yeah,
most definitely. That or take a couple extra bounces like that. They're one of those teams that really, we said that with that midfield and that running midfield is really going to take advantage of this, more open ground. Don't kick the ball from outside 50. Take a couple of extra steps into it. Either bring the defender and have a ping yourself. They sort of need to adapt to the Brisbane Lions mentality last year. As soon as you get inside 50, you have a ping. Because they just don't have a tall target there yet. The number one draft pick, he kicked 5 snags during his VFL debut. So you couldn't imagine it'd be long before he gets in there. 2 things I noticed from their forward line. Bad delivery in there. And they can't take overhead marks. So why are they bombing it down there? Have the ping from just inside 50 and make it better for the scoreboard. Make it a decent shot for winning.
Yeah, that's definitely what they have to do. But 9 of the Bulldogs led the disposals for the game, and the 10th player was Scott Pendlebury. I'm really interested in your view on Scott Pendlebury during that game. He had 25 disposals. He kicked a point. He had 6 turnovers. He looked a little bit slower than usual. He looked like he was actually getting caught. And is he on the decline? And is it too early to write off a superstar like Scott Pendlebury?
I think you have done exactly what Sauce did during the Richmond-Carlton game, mate, and you've gone the early crow, and it is way too early to call that. He's an absolute superstar of the game, but the things that did stand out was he's one of those players that sort of he never looked like he'd be able to be tackled, and he never looked like, whilst he was going in slow motion a lot of the time, he never looked like he was ever close of getting tackled, but it definitely stood out there. We are talking about a very fast-paced midfield, and the Western Bulldogs did apply a lot and an immense amount of pressure. The other thing you got to remember is Pendlebury didn't have some of his supporting cast there to help out with the load. Steel Sidebottom's not in there. He's missing Adams, missing Treloar, missing Phillips in there. So it'll take some time for him to adjust.
Yeah, he's got to get some more mates because some of them aren't even on the list anymore.
Yeah, but that's where it is. That's where they've got to do is they've got to start to look at the game plan, and I think it'll take him some adjusting too because he's always been surrounded with dominant midfielders throughout his whole career, and now he's the only one sort of left standing there. So it'll be some adjusting, I think.
And one that's going to come under scrutiny, Nathan Buckley. He's already heard a lot of it this week because of that loss, and can he get this Collingwood side who had salary cap issues, big things going on about Brodie Grundy as well, and is he worth a 7 years, $7 million deal? The Collingwood supporters that were, saying this is amazing, we've got the best ruckman in the comp, we've got him for 7 years, let's lock him in $1 million. A couple of years later, they're saying this is the worst contract we've ever had and writing him off already.
Yeah, I mean, he's worth $1 million a year at the moment. So $1 million a year, you need more than 39 hitouts, 11 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles. You need a lot more from $1 million player.
I think Stephen Martin, the old codger, came in and
he had
gave him a buff.
He had 15 touches. He lost the hitouts, but hitouts to advantage. That's not really documented on the stats that we're looking at here. So you couldn't imagine with the way that Western Bulldogs dominated that he won that stat either. So got first touch of the ball, but was ineffective. He wasn't able to get around the ground. The thing that gave him that big contract was, a lot of the time he was able to act as a proper big 6 foot something midfielder and get his own pill. He was averaging probably 25, 26 disposals.
Well, he'd get his own. He didn't set mark
30
as well.
hitouts, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to really start to step up other aspects of his games, because being able to hit the ball down to the floor is not enough of a skill to be $1 million a year.
Not at all, but Western Bulldogs, the line early in the week, their source was -3.5 before the bounce. It moved to -5.5, but the Bulldogs still would have covered that as well. So we both jumped on the Bulldogs there. So you're off the board for the year, and I'm 2-0.
Yep. Then we get into the Saturday games and the entree, as we said it, football all day. If you sat there from 1:45, you didn't have to move off your couch till about 11 o'clock at night.
I didn't.
It was good. Pez would have got through the very best. We had the first game was Melbourne. A lot of questions coming into this game. Obviously, their pre-season hadn't been too good, and Fremantle with an abundance of injuries. Melbourne were able to get the job done by 22 points, but it wasn't as easy as that 22 points seemed. The skill level in this game, Pez, I was messaging you during before.
Wasn't it poor?
It was that first quarter, there was so many turnovers. It was like watching aerial ping pong, but not in a good type. It was going back one way, back one way, back one way. Melbourne need to get better at their skill set if they want to be a genuine contender. And you listen to Melbourne talk, they actually believe that they're a genuine contender this year. Their skill needs to improve.
You take plus 12 marks inside 50 and you only win by 22 points. That's quite poor from Melbourne there, but they had their players, win the ball and do that as well. Stephen May, really impressive down the back there. Christian Petrarca is always a bit of a star there. And
23 disposals and 2 goals. We talked about him being dominant, and that's what he needs to do. The problem is he can't go get the pill and always kick the goals. They need someone else, and they did find Tom McDonald popping up a couple of times, 18 disposals, 2 goals, but they've got to find a genuine forward down there.
And they've got Ben Brown. They've got him. They've got
to find a genuine forward down there.
Ben Brown on Saturday, he would have helped because he would have been on the receiving end of some of those marks, and he's a really good set shot at goal. So we'll see what happens with that. They got the 4 points, which was the important thing, but Goodwin is still under the pump. Fremantle had a lot of injuries going into the game when the teams finally came out. Source, no Michael Walters and things like that. So they kind of lost it beforehand, which was no good. And we both jumped on the plus 12.5 for Freo because we didn't know what the teams were going to look like. And it went out to minus 15.5 before the game, and that was no good there. But a big injury to Alex Pearce, who looks like it's another knee.
Yeah, season ending,
which
probably.
was very, very sad. And Hamling with an ankle, it looks like he'll be out for about 4 weeks.
Most definitely. It was good, some promising signs from Fremantle, though, because we did talk about how, their probably big deficiency was being able to score, and they're a very defensive side, and they're also very young. So you expect them to gradually get better, but sometimes in that second year, you get those second-year blues, and a lot of those players drop off. Caleb Sarong was fantastic, 26 disposals. Adam Chera, the mature-age the mature-age player, 24 touches, and Andy Brayshaw with 29 continued his fine form. So some promising sign from the Ds, and realistically, they were in this game right until the end. The 22 points definitely didn't do it justice on that scoreboard.
Mate, and Longmuir, he knew what was the problem, that they didn't have the forward line there. So he tried to put Pearce up forward, got injured in the first quarter. But Matty Taberner, his hands at the ball and his strong marking reminds me of Jack Darling. And he played amazing, kicked 3 goals, but he needs support up there because he can't do it by himself. And that showed last year in games when they lost, when he still kicked, 2, 3, 4 every week. They need that other forward up there, which was meant to be Jesse Hogan, who didn't work out. So now, who is it going to be up there?
Yeah, I think we have to apologise a little bit. We didn't really give Taberner enough credit for his shot on goals, because he sort of came out of blocks last year firing with goals, but then he sort of really faded away. But his overhead marking skills is elite, and we didn't really touch on that enough in the last pod, so apologies to him. But 3 snags for him, really respectable for him. If they can get that from him every week, put Walters in there for a couple of snags, Fife for a couple, then they could generally push for the 8.
They'll be hard to beat at home.
100%.
They'll be in that middle rank fighting for the 8. This game was probably not a good one to lose against a Melbourne side who might be on the decline still, but we'll see what happens. And it's only round 1. We can't take too much on board from it. But we move to the next game, and will we take too much on board here? We had the Adelaide Crows defeating your Geelong Cats. Adelaide 103, Geelong 91. They won by 12 points, Sauce. What happened here?
Well, it was exactly what we spoke about in the pre-show, Pez. Not in terms of this game especially, but the teams that take advantage of that run, they will they'll look good. And Adelaide looked amazing early. They continually run. They took the game on. They opened the game up. And I mean, realistically, they held their own nerve too going to that fourth quarter when Geelong definitely were coming back and they kicked 4 or 5 in that last quarter. But Adelaide were very impressive. Absolute return of Tex Walker. Sneaky Coleman.
Look at that, Walker, 5 goals. You wouldn't have picked it after the grand final in 2017 that he'd be back kicking bags like that. He had 4 at half time, kicked 1 in the second half, and finished with 5 there. But the thing...
Not only 5, though, 18 disposals. That was like 2 off his best ever. Like, that's incredible.
The thing that got me, after watching the Amazon Prime, we're just going to pump it up again with the Rory Sloane and they're following Adelaide. At the end of that season, they looked like they were together. I would have never picked Geelong not to cover the line here at 24.5. But the effort that the Adelaide Crows put in around the footy was next to no one. It was the best over the round for sure. And I don't know if they can keep it up every week because of their list. But if they can do that in spurts, they become a team that can get the upset win every now and then. Now, they're not going to win many games, Sauce. But here's one that they've stolen, and Geelong need to work hard now because they need to finish top 4.
Yeah, really disappointing for Geelong here because we spoke about this, that they are definitely going to be the hunter this year. There's been a lot talked about them and how they're buying a premiership, and it has to be a premiership or bust. Not a great start, but handy little loss to have straight out though. Get the bad one out of the way. Round 1. This is not one of those games that you want to drop later in the year when you've got 7 or 8 game win streak and then you lose it to the Crows. That's one of the ones that you can sort of put away and be like, you know what? Round 1, they weren't prepared. They probably didn't give the respect enough to the opposition, most definitely not. They would have been absolutely exposed, and now they can actually plan going into week 2 against Brisbane. But yeah, really disappointing for the Cats. You think that they would have come out with a better effort.
Yeah, well, they couldn't. They didn't. Their forward line didn't look too good. Isaac Smith nearly ran away with the game at the end. The fitness level he's got, and he kicked his 2 and missed one as well. But the big story was the big injury, the big tribunal that's coming up. Patrick Dangerfield elected to bump, knocked out Callie, and broken nose and blood. It didn't look pretty, and a lot of people calling for his head.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. Like, obviously, I'm a Geelong fan, Pez, and you actually were the one that brought this up. It's a bit disappointing people have gone out headhunting for it. You look at the actual act, and don't get me wrong, the rule very clearly states that if you elect to bump, a reasonable effect from a bump is that there could be a possible head clash, and you're held responsible. So most definitely he has he's done the wrong thing. Well, he's not done the wrong thing, but he's elected to bounce. He has to wear the consequences. But the amount of people that were calling out, it needs to be 6 weeks, it needs to be 3 weeks. Like for me, it's 1 to 2 weeks. It's probably 2 weeks with the amount of scrutiny on the head-high contact. But really disappointing for him and a lot of punters out there because Brownlow is gone.
Oh, Brownlow's gone for the punters, but the big story is you've got to look after the head. There's been lots of research continuing to happen overseas in the NFL and things like that with concussions, so the head is sacrosanct. If you elect a bump, even if it's an accidental head clash, accidental shoulder, whatever it might be, you could see in the vision, his shoulder did not hit his head.
No,
it was a head clash. His nose went into his head. He was knocked out before he hit the ground. A little bit of whiplash when he did hit the ground as well. So it looks bad. And 3 weeks is probably where it's going to be. If Geelong can put up a good case in the tribunal, they might be able to get it down to 2.
Well, it's interesting the case that they've gone in there, Pez, because Patrick Dangerfield's one of the defences they're going with is that he didn't elect to bump. He actually elected to protect himself because he was running in there and tried to tackle, but then decided that he was going to be, he was going to be involved in a clash. So he's braced himself with the shoulder, and then as he didn't actually elect to jump. He actually elected to protect himself, and as you can see, he doesn't jump off the ground. It's sort of just a clash. So I don't think it's a great argument.
No, he stayed on the ground, which is great.
Yeah,
but he bumped. He didn't brace. He braced for the bump. That's what he did. He didn't brace to protect himself.
Yeah.
He actually braced for the bump. Put the shoulder and the arm out there. Unfortunate head clash. Dangerfield's head would have been hurting after that as well. His nose straight.
He got stitches in the forehead,
straight in the back of the head. So when these things happen, it's just not good. What were his other choices? He had to try and tackle, or he had to jump out of the way, or he had to try and go lower. It's just a really tough situation.
It's really tough because if he tackles, he puts himself in a very vulnerable spot. And, as they're saying, is that your first option's got to be to protect yourself, which he's done here. I'm not saying that he should get off, most definitely not. It was a terrible clash, but there's two things I take out of it, Pez. I don't like that you are penalised for the result of the injury. Now, only because if he gets up and walks away, no concussion, no broken nose, it's not as bad, correct? There was an incident on Thursday Night Football with the Richmond guy, and he throws a malice sort of elbow, and he collects someone intentionally, but because there was no concussion, there was no injury, he gets off with a fine. Now, that's what I don't like about it, and I don't know how you word malice into the rule, but that's surely got to be taken into consideration that he actually, it was a football act, which was one of the wordings they used a couple of years ago. The only problem was that, he's left himself vulnerable if he, by electing to bump, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard. It's just it's
tough.
a head clash done. You can't, if you put malice into it, you've got more opinion coming into it. It's very hard to judge. And how do you judge a missed elbow as malice if I didn't know their head was there?
Well, that's the intentional aspect
like
of it. You look at what was his face in the preseason from Carlton that did it.
Zach Williams.
Zach Williams, yeah, that was clearly an intentional act, and he got 2 weeks for it, and you're going to get someone who, again, the result is far worse because he obviously concussed and broken nose, and he wasn't able to partake in the game, and he's got 12 days off, so he can't participate in the next 2 games either.
You've just got to be lucky. If you choose to bump and there's a head clash or their head gets done, you've got to be lucky that bloke might not be as bad and can get up and doesn't have to miss weeks and doesn't break his nose and all of those things. It's just it's the way of the game now.
It's unlucky.
You got to choose to tackle and go from there. I'm sure there'll be more bumps over the season because the bump was meant to be dead Sauce about 5 or 6 years ago, and people are still bumping. So we'll speak about another bump that's not a tribunal but on one of the Sunday games coming up. But before we do that, this game you were at, Sauce, Essendon versus Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium. On the night, it was a tale of not even two halves. Essendon in the second quarter, Hawthorn coming back from 40 points down to win by a point. Even when Essendon hit the front again with 5 points up with about 2 minutes to go, Hawthorn got over the line by a point.
Yeah, you most definitely didn't put that into justice, Pez. It was definitely a tale of 1 quarter versus 3 quarters because Hawks trailed at halftime by 39 points. The Bombers banged on 8 goals to 1 in the second term. That is massive. But then after that, they went on their own sort of 1 goal to 10 to 1 third term, and then they fell behind in the final 2 minutes, as you said. And Pez, I told you this needed to be the opening game for the AFL 2020 season, 2021 season. I told you.
Yeah, do the opening game.
Absolute cracker.
Absolute cracker from 2 bottom sides, and all the Essendon fans that were going on about, you know what? How did you put us in the bottom 4? Have a look what you just lost to. You got a 40-point lead, and you lost to a Hawthorn side who aren't going to win many games this year either. And look what's happened to you. It's absolutely unbelievable. They covered the line by it was 2.5 Sauce. So you actually got that, snuck it in by a point.
Little ripper.
Hawthorn would have got the tip, but missed out on that. So I don't know. Ben McAvoy, I like the way he goes about it. He was the captain and did a few things like that. I always like Bruce when he can step up and kick a goal. But Tommy Mitchell in that second half, Brownlow medalist, just came in and this is my footy. We're moving it forward. We're going on from here.
Yeah, most definitely. One thing I did notice from this game, and there was a lot of people talking about the free kick count at the end of the game. Now, Essendon definitely won that free kick count pretty heavily, but if you looked at it at halftime, this is where I have a problem with the free kick count. Because at halftime, there was a very big discrepancy between Essendon. I think it was about 10 or 15 different. But then what happened in the second half is obviously what happens, the umpires go in there and they have a look at the stats and they go, okay, well, there's going to be some opportunities here, not avoiding free kicks for Essendon, but there's opportunities of ones that we probably can pay Hawthorn to make it come back a little bit. And that definitely came into effect in that second half. They definitely adjusted the way that they were umpiring across the game, and it didn't affect the result, most definitely, but extremely frustrating from an observer who doesn't follow either team.
Mate, you've stolen my thunder in a game that's later on the Sunday again, but the free kick count is one of my biggest pet hates. When there is a discrepancy of 5 or more, and it just continues to grow, the fans that get on Twitter and just complain about the free kicks, you're stealing that game away from us, you're doing this, you're doing that. Watch the game and actually see which free kicks matter. Do you know what happens? When a player takes a mark inside 50 and then someone gives them a chop over the head, they've already taken the mark, that's paid as a free kick.
We spoke about that Thursday night.
But they took the mark. So that counts on the stat. So if you're not going to count those on the stats, it looks a lot better. And sometimes, you know what equals free kick? Effort. Effort can equal free kicks. So it doesn't have to be the umpire cost us this. Maybe your players aren't putting in enough effort, or maybe the other team are just putting in so much effort that they're getting you caught for holding the ball and things like that. So I don't like it when that comes up. Sometimes there are calls that are, they cost you a goal here and there. It should even out over the game. I know it doesn't in every single game source, but yeah, massive pet hate of mine as well. And I dislike the fans on Twitter who jump on board and go, oh, the umpires are costing us the game.
I mean, you spoke about, things that cost them the game. The things that cost Essendon the game on Saturday night. One, giving away a 39-point lead. That's probably on them.
Yep.
Two was not getting easy goals. Sammy Draper, Jide Colwell, Kale Hooker. In the first quarter, they had 3 or 4 opportunities, very in front of goal, had great, centre clearances. They took the mark, and then they just completely butchered the shots on goal. And they were, I know that if you look at they only scored 13 behinds, but it's the behinds that they score when they're right in front on set shots, and they should be putting them away as elite footballers. They're the ones that really, really, really hurt as football fans. Not about the free kick count. It is frustrating when you're watching that second half and there's a discrepancy of such a big difference, and they're only blowing it one way to make sure that it sort of it doesn't look as bad. But it is frustrating when people go and blame the umpires. Easy set shots on goal cost them the game. Straight out. Yep. And obviously not performing for 3/4 of a game.
Exactly right. So you got your players to blame, but someone's always going to blame the umpires, and it even happens to the club you support, and you don't like it when it does happen. So that's no good there. So what happened there, Sauce? You got the line there. I missed out on Hawthorn, even though they had the win. So that's what happens with the lines. And we're back to even. At 2 apiece for the year after that game. So
yeah, most definitely, Pez. And one of the biggest upsets of the round definitely came on that Saturday night after the Geelong. We thought that was going to be one of the biggest ones. This probably equally... actually, you know what? You probably could have predicted it because Sydney did change their logo. They've gone more aggressive, and that's what happened, mate. They were a lot more aggressive. They bought the run. The Swans, in an absolutely topsy-turvy game, got the chocolates against, prelim finalist, the Brisbane Lions, by 31 points, which is incredible for them to keep that big league.
Look at that. Isaac Heaney, McDonald and Goulden, all 3 goals and multiple behinds between them as well. It's started off with Brisbane, 3 goals really, really quickly up at the Gabba, and you're sitting there going, you know what? This is going to be an absolute belting. It would be a 10-goal win. Sydney kicked the next 7 goals of the game. And then Brisbane came back and they were draw at halftime, 52 points apiece. And Sydney, they didn't put their heads down or anything. They went in at halftime, they came back, they regrouped. They came out and they won this game by 31 points. Now, that is unheard of against the Brisbane Lions side up at the Gabba. We saw the Geelong upset earlier in the day. Didn't think I was going to see this one. And they are the 2 tips, Source, that I actually got wrong for the round. The 2 massive upsets that I don't think anyone in their right mind
no one
would have tipped it.
No one. And if they did tip, they forgot to put their tips in because they got the away team. Well, at least this one you did because you couldn't have picked it. But Sydney were incredible. Their run around the ground really, really made Brisbane, who are one of the faster teams in the league, made them look really slow. And their ability of them to convert... their forward line is going to be really scary with news that Buddy Franklin could be stepping in. Errol Goulding, 3 goals won, 19 disposals. He looked incredible out there.
Maybe that's what Buddy's saying. This young fella's going to take my spotlight at Sydney. I'm going to come back and remind everyone who I am.
Look at that. Isaac Heaney, 3. Logan McDonald, 3. Errol Goulding, 3. You put Buddy Franklin in there to get a 3 as well. That's going to be a dangerous forward line.
Keep going down the list, Source. Yeah, Sam Reid, 2. Wicks, your man, 2.
My man Wicks.
Luke Parker, 2. Mills, 2. What's going on with this multiple goal kicking? Tom Papley only kicked 1 goal, and they relied on him heavily.
Kicks 1-1. Yeah. So he's still getting around there.
But they relied on him heavily.
That forward line's going to be dangerous.
If Tom Papley didn't kick 3 or 4 goals last year, Sydney had no chance to win. He's only kicked 1 goal here, and look at that. They've won by 31 points against a lot of people's premiership favourites. A lot of people's, they're going to definitely finish in the top 4 type picks. Away from home, it's a bad one to lose to the Lions.
Most definitely, but we spoke about this probably more last year about how exciting the Swans could be when they put it together, and maybe we had the crow a little bit too early last year, Pez, with that young midfield that they've got and that young bodies around the ground. James Rowbottom had 8 tackles, and he looked incredible out there with 22 disposals. But not only that, the names that jump off the paper, it's really good that we're not having Luke Parker and Lloyd having 40 each. We had Mills that had 29. You obviously had Lloyd in there with 24. You had Hickey, 23.
Mate, I've never seen Hickey play a better game. And he had 23 disposals as a ruckman. He's been everywhere, Hickey. And at his, fourth club now, and 23 disposals for Sydney. He actually looked good around the ground.
He did look good. He looked like a brand new player. Because when I saw Hickey, I thought it might have been his brother or something, because another young star. I'm unaware that he he actually could play football. So it was probably good that they had Robbie Fox out. Allowed him in there.
When he was out, that's when I should have gone the tip for Sydney, because he didn't turn the ball over in the back line. But I can't believe that Brisbane, went into half time, even at 3/4 time there, and couldn't come out and really get some grunt in there in the middle and start winning the ball out. Joe Danaher's, debut, he kicked a goal. He was really happy at the start of the game. He kicked 2 in the end, but he grabbed his jumper and said, you know what, this is where I belong. And then they go on to lose. So it was quite disappointing.
Most definitely. Speaking of things that were a bit disappointing, we head on to the Sunday game, Pez, and I know you're going to absolutely barrel this team, but I thought North Melbourne in their game against Port Adelaide, another team that finished top of the ladder last year, and they were one kick away, realistically, from playing in a grand final. They came up against the Power, and they got absolutely pants by 52 points. But early on in the game, they had a decent sort of stronghold on the game, and they did keep that balance. If it wasn't for the second quarter 8-goal haul by Port Adelaide, showing that they now, with adding Alir and Fantasia had 4 goals. I think he had 4 goals. 4. Like they've just added another elite forward into that already strong forward line. Port Adelaide have to be the front runners, Pez, because they were very impressive. They already were tipped to be one of the favourites.
Don't go the early crow against only playing against a wooden spoon.
I had them winning the premiership, Pez. I had them top of the ladder.
Mate, against the wooden spoon, don't take too much out of this game. North Melbourne really came out early and were dominating the inside 50s, the contested footy. They had the effort there, and they just couldn't kick a score. They couldn't kick anything. 2 goals 4 to 2 goals 2 in the first quarter. Port Adelaide came out and kicked 8 goals 2 to 1 goal 2 in the second to put the game to bed, lead by around 40 points. Travis Boak continued his Brownlow form. Isn't he great to watch?
He's like a fine wine, isn't he? What's he now, 33, and he racked up 27 and 9 clearances.
And this incredible. Is when you can't write him off. And one thing I did notice about Fantasia, yes, he's a silky smooth finisher. A couple of times there where he did kick goals and he finished the goal, he could have passed it off. A little handball over the top, or a little chip kick 15 metres in front of him to a guy that was standing there, easy set shot. I think Fantasia a little bit selfish, and then
you got to be on your new club.
Might have got told about it, because in the fourth quarter, about 3 minutes to go, he could have kicked his 5th, passed it off inside the 50. So I think it got mentioned.
I mean, you got to remember that Fantasia has had a long time away from football, very inconsistent run at Essendon, and when he was playing, he was unable to get a couple of snags because the delivery into that forward line wasn't as good as it was yesterday. It was coming in absolute spades, mate. It was coming in left, right, and centre.
Quick question for those Essendon fans that bagged us out for putting them bottom 4 and stuff. Do you think if Fantasia played on Saturday night against the Hawks, they would have had a win?
Well, let's keep on moving there. But as we said, North Melbourne showed some early signs. Luke Davies-Uniacke, he's going to be incredible. I know I can't say his name. He had like 10 touches in the first quarter until obviously they went into a quarter time and Port Adelaide put some work into him. He finished with 20 for the game, but really impressive for some of their young blokes. Him, Atley, Jaden Stevenson at his new club had 33 touches. Would have liked him to see kick one of those couple of shots on goal that he had. He ended up with 33 and 2 behinds, but 7 tackles, 5 clearances. He was very good.
He was dirty on himself when he missed a couple of those goals. Dirty. But the biggest stat for Jaden Stevenson, he's only ever been played in the forward line or halfback, he had 7 tackles. Yep. And that shows effort.
Yep, and that was something that really lacked at times last year after his, first season that he had at Collingwood, where he came out of the blocks running, won the Rising Star, and then he was involved in that gambling betting saga. He's still wearing the stripes; they're just a different colour, so it's good for Jaden Stevenson. Not too hard to make an adjustment, but obviously now when you put the effort in there, very capable and quality footballer. And tell you what, if he played on Friday night with Collingwood, it would have included him more run.
You just skipped over that there. But I think Collingwood supporters are going to be bleeding for years to come. The Rising Star in 2018, and I don't know if he can become an elite midfielder, but he can definitely pinch hit in there, and he can go forward and kick goals. So we'll struggle at North, obviously, to kick goals, but he will try and get some. We obviously both got the line there, minus 31.5 for Port Adelaide. Not much else to say at this game, but
Probably the only thing was that North Melbourne didn't seem as bad as I thought they were going to. As I said, some of these young guys actually looked not too bad, Port Adelaide, though, looked very, very impressive, and they are going to be a force to be reckoned with, I think.
Yeah, and I think what we said about Port Adelaide in our preseason lead prediction show is they are a team that care about minor premierships.
Yep.
So they care about every preseason game. You saw Geelong's effort, you saw Brisbane's effort. Port Adelaide, they're going to bring it every single week, whoever's on the park. They were missing Connor Rozee as well. So you bring him in. I don't know who you bring him in for, but you make that team even stronger.
Yeah, most definitely, Pez. All right, get on to the next game, Pez. I know you've been dying to talk about this. Your Saints were extremely brave. This game could have gone anyway. It absolutely belted down with rain, and it looked very miserable sort of conditions. But your Saints escaped with an 8-point win. But probably the biggest story was the amount of opportunities that GWS had in that last quarter to really take it. And your never say die Saints with, count them, 8 players out, Pez.
Eight players. Everyone's saying that.
Brad Crouch, he's in your best 22.
Yep.
Paddy Ryder.
Yep.
Zach Jones.
Yep.
Hanbury.
Yep.
King.
Yep.
Frawley.
No.
Piss off.
Definitely not.
Rowan Marshall.
And that's 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else?
Geary.
No. So that's 6, isn't it?
That's six. Yeah.
6 players because
I
James
reckon
Frawley.
Frawley is in your best 22.
Well, you look at our defenders and they're very unknown defenders. Dougal Howard, I've got to give him a big shout out.
Oh, that's unusual for you.
You
love old Dougal Howard.
I love Dougal Howard coming to the club. He will become an elite defender in the game because he can do it one-on-one. He structures that defence down there. Callum Wilkie, the accountant from Adelaide who came from nowhere, he's going great guns as well. Jake Carlisle can't get a game. We're actually very set, and I think we've only got Frawley because I did not like him when he was at Melbourne, and you remember on the podcast, not liking his slowness and even his disposal. So unless he's improved that and can come back in, he's not the Frawley he once was at Hawthorn. And I think these younger players should have their spot until they lose it.
He'd be good in there for a bit of leadership in there, though. That's one thing that sometimes the Saints do lack. Probably earlier on last year than going forward the rest of the year, but I think they could definitely use in there for that experience in there. But if it's going to come at the expense of a young gun who's performing, then you're probably right. He's probably not in the best 22. But speaking of young guns, mate, Jack Billings had 30. Jade Gresham had 28. Hunter Clark, our man, our pod favourite, Hunter Clark. He looks incredible. And then something we definitely had the early crow on that, Pez. I heard a lot of commentators talking about, he really sort of jumped out of him towards the final series. He had an amazing year last year, and we were on him right from the start.
You've got to be on him. And when you watch the team closely every week, you're going to pick up on that. I thought Gresham was really good around the ground. Membry moved up, took a couple of good grabs in the wet.
Yep. And ended with 3 goals and 2 goal assists as well. He looked really good.
Oh, yeah. And one thing I was really impressed with by the Giants was some of their ability. You've got Callum Ward. You can't tackle the bloke. Canelio, not that impressive, but he was getting the pill. He was moving it on forward. But Toby Green, whenever he's around the ball,
so exciting.
And he's not as good as Dustin Martin, yeah.
No.
He reminds me of Dustin Martin when he's around the footy because he just gets things done. He took an absolute screamer in the wet. Yeah. It was touch first, but they always pay them. they always do pay them.
He had majority of the pill there, and you don't want to take that away from him.
And he's come down with it in the wet. He's nearly taken a couple of other grabs. I would have loved to see this game in dry conditions to see what other players could do. But the players with skills like Toby Green, Hunter Clark really stand out when they play in the wet.
Yeah, most definitely. Like Toby Green had that 1 goal after he took that big screamer. Had 3 behinds. Probably could have, in dry conditions, probably at least would have had 3-1. You're very lucky that it wasn't.
Did you see the goal kicking?
He looked electric around that forward line.
So many shots that just went across the face, out on the full. For both sides, it was absolutely ridiculous. But St Kilda, I think they just had that small forward structure where when they did get the ball forward, it would come to ground and they could continue to, get it forward. Jack Higgins from Richmond, very, very impressed with him coming from there and able to do that. Dan Butler didn't have a massive impact, but did it where it mattered. And
40 seconds to go, kicked a very, very electric goal, mate, and definitely handed you guys that clear victory.
Look,
I did see on a little Snapchat of you having a nice little celebration.
Oh, did you?
I did saw that.
I didn't see that Snapchat. I was obviously not sent it, but
you were enjoying that goal very.
Oh, mate, you should have seen me that afternoon on the couch. Oh, you did.
I didn't.
I didn't know that. That's news to me. So there you go. I hope that's saved there so I can actually have a look at that. But he got the call where he actually bumped. He elected to bump, and Callum Ward's dropped the ball. And he didn't tackle. He had his arms out, kind of going around him. But that's the big controversy. St Kilda up by 2 points, about a minute to go, and people saying it cost GWS the game. Now, St Kilda were up in the wet, GWS in the back 50. The ball was loose. I don't see the call costing GWS the game. Yes, it finished the game and gave them no chance to do that at the end. But it's the same thing with the free kicks differential source. GWS killed that differential. St Kilda supporters on Twitter were going on about it. I don't agree with that. I don't like that. It's because St Kilda were doing stupid things like Sean McKernan. He was grabbing people. He grabbed Himmelberg in the ruck. He grabbed his jumper.
Silly.
When you grab his jumper, mate, it's
obvious.
always going to be a free kick. He gave up a goal.
Especially in a game that's already congested and when they're trying to get the ball
when
out
goals
of there.
are hard to come by,
Yeah,
he gave up a goal.
That's dumb.
You know what you got to do? You put your flat hand on the jumper. Never grab the jumper, whatever you do, because if the umpire sees it, bang, it's a free
Always
kick.
going to be a free kick. All right, I'm very interested with that one, Pez, because I actually had this argument with my dad watching this game, and Dad and I have this argument a lot of the time with the holding the ball decision, right? To me, that is 100% a free kick because he did not dispose of the ball correctly.
Yeah, but I don't know when that's a rule. Sometimes
of course it is.
No, sometimes it's a rule, sometimes it's not.
Maybe they shouldn't have called it holding the ball, but it should have been dropping the ball or a throw or something because you can't just drop the ball.
But the attempt, you always hear that in the round, yeah?
No.
Oh, yeah, yes, you do. He attempted to kick it. Oh, yeah, when they get tackled,
but that's when he's
slung
been
around.
tackled and he hasn't had the opportunity to get rid of it and he's made the attempt. In that one there, realistically, he's been bumped and the ball has come out of his hands because he had possession. He didn't dispose of the ball. Therefore, it has to be holding the ball. Maybe it's not called holding the ball. Maybe it's called dropping the ball or a throw or whatever, but he did not dispose of the football correctly. In our game, you have to kick it or handball it. He didn't either. He has to be pinned.
No, well, you got to watch the games this week and see how many times it actually happens.
I watched all games last week,
when-
so don't tell me I have to watch games.
When there's players that don't dispose of the ball source and it's called play on, he attempted to kick it, play on, and sometimes umpires will come out of the blue and say, oh, incorrect disposal. And then I'm wondering, does this rule exist? I don't know if it does or not.
It has to exist in Pez, and I think that, I think they actually probably just need to clarify it because I have this argument with my dad all the time because he's like, that's not a rule. The rule is that it just has to actually be tackled and you have to dispose of it effectively. And it's like, there is nothing called incorrect disposal in the rule.
Well, I don't know what's going on with that rule, but we'll watch that with intent. It only came about because it was in the last minute of the game, but St Kilda get a brave victory, as you said. Loney, ridiculous snap in the wet from the side to get him back in it, and then Seb Ross, he kicked one out on the full by 30 metres earlier in the game and then stabbed one from 50. So a couple of things that happened for St Kilda in that last quarter to rally. You would have thought 10 points down, Himmelberg standing in front, ready to put them nearly 3 goals up. That was to seal it, and he's hit the post. He's missed it. St Kilda have come back and stolen it by 8 points, and they get the 4 points. GWS have to go over to Fremantle next week and see what happens there. Very interesting
tough
game.
game for them as well. Hopefully for the Giants that those injuries are still there for the Fremantle Dockers and they can bring that same sort of effort and intent to that to the game in SBS Stadium.
That's it, Sauce. And that I was on the Saints, of course, and you were on the Giants, so that's where I've pipped you this week on the Lions.
Pipped me on that one this week, and I don't mind being pipped by one of those ones in the topsy-turvy games and all the ones that we talked about as being the straight-out obvious ones. I'm glad they all lost.
Yeah, it could have gone either way. But we finished the season over in Western Australia at SBS Stadium. We had West Coast versus Gold Coast, and before I will say it, West Coast 25 points, 83 to 58. But the biggest story is Matt Rowell off with a knee in that first quarter. He was on the crutches, came back to the bench, and people had to get around him because I just hope I don't hear really bad news about this.
I just hope that he doesn't become like a Greg Oden or one of those players, Canby, with those sort of number one draft picks who just don't seem to ever get rid of that injury tag.
He's shown us so much already.
Shown us so much. And look, he looked really, really good in that first quarter. I thought he was probably going to end up with 30 touches. And actually at stages, they really, really the Gold Coast Suns, let's be clear here, they stood up when he went down. If you add him into that side, they were a very big chance of snatching this game because the West Coast Eagles were not that impressive. Oscar Allen obviously was very impressive, kicking 4 goals, but the West Coast Eagles just weren't dominant in that game, and the Gold Coast inexperience really cost them to leaving it competitive in that last quarter.
Yeah, they weren't dominant. Some of the really positive things for West Coast is Nat Nui in the ruck and around the ground, and Jack Darling and his ability to mark the ball. There was a couple that just dropped to the ground, and I thought could have been paid. The way he goes and runs at the footy hard and marks it, really impressive forward. Will be I think, their best forward this year and kicked the most goals for them. King down the other end, same thing. He's impressive up the ground as well. You had Miller, who was, trying to do a tagging role early, and then he had to, get off the chain. He got a goal from a stoppage there, and it really helped him. Gold Coast led by a point heading into the third quarter.
Yep.
And then West Coast just, had to go, this is at our home ground. This is going to be really embarrassing. We've got to turn this around, and end up winning by 25 points. And the thing I don't want to say about the Gold Coast Suns is they were brave. Because that's the narrative last year.
Yeah, no, they're past that now. They're at that next stage of their career where they need to look at this game and go, like, you know what? That's where we need our experienced players and our senior players to step up and not have those really ticky-tacky, terrible decisions that they made sometimes, that all of those goals in that last quarter came off poor decisions and turnovers. It wasn't West Coast winning their own pill. It was, Gold Coast had the pill, and when they turned the ball over, this rule really, really kills you in turnovers.
Oh, it does. And I was really impressed with Gold Coast in the first 3 quarters, Sauce, and even the start of the fourth, where they get West Coast to turn the ball over at a half-forward line, and they just have numbers around the footy. They'd handball. Mm-hmm. They were brave. They were accurate in their kicking.
Yeah.
And they just looked like a really good side. I know it's a bigger ground over at Optus, but I'd love to see them against a team that isn't as experienced as West Coast as well, who were able to just, bigger bodies and able to get it done in the end. But Gold Coast are going to, not upset, but they're going to beat a lot of teams this year.
They're going to be really competitive. And I was really hoping that they actually would get that game, because for them, for experience as well as confidence going in, to go over to SBS Stadium and beat an experienced West Coast side that, many people have finishing the top 8, one of the best sides in the comp, a lot of people are saying, they really showed a lot of fight, but that's where they need some more than just fight, and more than being brave and more than being courageous. They need some results.
They need these wins.
They need the wins, because a 24-point loss after a 25-point loss after going into the game, as $5 outsiders, and really the line was up at 28.5. For them to only just cover it is not good enough. And realistically, I know that they went down one person on the bench, and they had Rode, probably their best midfielder. But they realistically got beaten by experience. These are the wins that they need to get, especially when a lot of the game was played on their terms.
Yeah, and they've got an impressive young list. Lukosius I really like off that back line with his kicking.
Lockie Weller looked good as well. He kicked a nice little snag.
That's amazing, that goal. He just
came out of nowhere, just popped one, boom, goal.
How did he get that footy in the stoppage there? But Oleg Markov as well from Richmond, a fringe player from Richmond.
Great pickup.
He played really well, took some really good marks, made really good decisions. And really looking forward to watching the Gold Coast this year. Remember like 3-4 years ago, it was like, the Gold Coast are playing, they're going to lose by 80 points. Now it's going to be like, Gold Coast are in this game. Gold Coast should be able to win.
And that's what it is. I want to see them get those victories. They need to get past these 3 or 4 win marks that they've been on the last couple of years. This is the season for them to really take their game. And as you said, they need to make the 8, realistically. That needs to be a success for them. No more brave victories, because realistically to that's a disappointing loss.
Yeah, and in the end, it should be. They need to let that burn. They need to go around and do other things. So that closes off the 9 game Sauce, and Gold Coast Suns 27.5 it was when we got it, so we still covered it there.
Lucky Cripps missed that goal at the end.
Yep, hit the post, which was good. So I got 5 out of 9 on the lines, and you got 4 out of 9. So we'll take a 1-point lead there in our end-to-end. Later on in the week, I think Wednesday night before the round, we'll be doing our end-to-end podcast then, and we'll be giving you our previews and all the lines there, Sauce. So make sure you look out for it, and you've subscribed on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't already, at Behind the Bound on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Jump on board. I've been Pez. Peace out.
I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next time, guys. Enjoy.